Hey friends, this is Dolynny TV. I'm going to keep this brief here this morning as we get set up for the Dallas Stars later tonight on Hockey Night in Canada. The Edmonton Oilers, the trade deadline has come and passed. If you caught the tongue-in-cheek short there from last night as we approached the end of the trade deadline time and saw nothing happen. Well, you know kind of where my thoughts are on yesterday of itself, but obviously the trade deadline as a whole for the Edmonton Oilers was pretty productive, and I do want to spend just a moment or two talking about that here on the channel today. So if you are new to the channel, consider hitting that subscribe button. Would love to have you aboard. We're in it to win it right now, right? That's what the Edmonton Oilers are trying to get to, is the big dance again, and we're about 18 points, 9 wins, whatever you want to say, away from securing a playoff spot if the cut line is 94 points. So what we know about the Oilers here is they didn't do anything yesterday. That's kind of tough, right? You were expected, based on what Bob Stauffer was saying as soon as he went live at noon on 880 Ched, based on kind of, the other moves the Oilers did have available to them, something was still likely to happen. It never materialized, however, and the Oilers end the trade deadline with Trent Frederick, Max Jones, and Jake Wallman as the new acquisitions to a team that, again, has struggled mightily defensively at times this season, right? It's as much as everybody wants to run Stuart Skinner and Cal Pickard out of town, you got to remember you've also spent most of the year trying to run Bouchard out of town, and he's a top pairing defenseman. So that's where Jake Wallman comes in, steady eddies things a little bit. Hopefully he'll take a little bit of the offensive pressure as well off of Bouchard. I think that was kind of our expectation for John Klingberg, which just quite hasn't panned out. But again, expecting a guy who's played no hockey in the past year and a half or whatever it was before Klingberg signed with us, well, that was a lot. But again, you can always be surprised by good performance, and so far the results pretty mediocre as expected. So it just is what it is at that point. But for the Edmonton Oilers, it's kind of another trade deadline that goes by without a big move on deadline day, when we continue to talk about winning cups with Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid. So although the Oilers got a heck of a lot harder to play against, you saw literally the third tier of the acquisitions, that being Max Jones. You saw the difference in the elements he brought to the game against the Montreal Canadiens the other day, and it was just wow. It was mind-blowing actually seeing a guy compete that hard, seeing a guy move his boots like that and be a little bit of a problem in the offensive zone as a fourth line player. So hopefully that keeps up, and then you add Trent Frederick, who will probably rotate around the middle six, probably play off of a guy like Evander Kane and Victor Arvidsson and Jeff Skinner a little bit for that second line role with Leon Draisaitl. And all of a sudden, now look at yourself go. You've got two guys added into that are an element of hard to play against. And let me tell you, hard to play against is going to be the biggest part of success for the Edmonton Oilers in the playoffs. Obviously, health, opponents' health, and straight up just every facet of the game being on point is going to be the top three. But when it comes down to it, then you all of a sudden got to see if the defense can hold true, or if the Oilers, after these moves, are truly that much harder to play against. And that comes down to Evander Kane being healthy and ready to go for playoffs as well. If Kane is the physical force, if he is the truck that he has normally been in his career, and he has a scoring touch back, the Oilers are going to have some very, very good fortunes in the playoffs. Again, last year, if Evander Kane scores some goals in the playoffs, as opposed to I think he only had one or whatever, it would have been a very different story for the Oilers. And truth be told, outside of the few games against Vancouver, they cleaned up in the first three rounds. It's just, all of a sudden you have a guy who's in your lineup adding some physicality like Kane does, adding some goal scoring like Kane does, and now you have Trent Frederick, now you have Max Jones, now you have a little bit deeper of a roster to go to that includes Corey Perry's gamesmanship, that includes Matthew Savoy's skill, that includes situations all around this roster that we now have thanks to this trade deadline. And oh, by the way, we actually acquired a legit top four D-man based on stature this season in Jake Wallman. suddenly things look a lot better for the Edmonton Oilers. So despite not doing anything on trade deadline day, as long as everything comes to pass, kind of, I guess to say, is everything should be better for the Oilers come playoff time than it was a few days ago, and that's nice to know, right? It is a good move by Stan Bowman to acquire a couple of different element players. We knew the defense upgrade was coming no matter what, but Max Jones, Trent Frederick, there's been a large base of fans here on the channel that are screaming for physicality out of the Oilers. And let me tell you, you get Evander Kane in, you get Max Jones in, you get, of course, Trent Frederick in, you take out a guy maybe like Victor Arvidsson, maybe a guy like Jeff Skinner, and the Edmonton Oilers, for what you've gotten out of them so far this year in terms of goal scoring and points, you take them out of the lineup and add the physicality, you have all of a sudden gone plus, plus, plus in terms of the lineups. So that's exciting to see for us as we close out the year. Obviously, right now for the Oilers, you got to get closer and closer and closer to the end of the season. We're still 20 games away. We've got to win 9 games, so our track record really can be negative the rest of the way home, and the Oilers still have a good chance at making a top 8 playoff spot. Now that said, there are complications in the Pacific Division as well right now, where the Canucks and Flames have really pushed of late. The LA Kings are still 2 games behind everybody else right now due to everything they've had go on this season. So what that looks like from a division perspective is third place in the Pacific Division. Whether you want to believe it, I want to believe it, or anyone wants to believe it, is up for grabs right now. And that is absolute insanity between the Flames, Canucks, and Kings, as unless anything changes with Vegas, the Oilers will once again take home the 2 seed here, and away we go against one of those 3 teams in a battle to start the playoffs. And I tell you, Canucks, Flames, Kings, we've played them all here recent memory, and all have been really good series. I mean, the Kings series seem to get easier and easier every year, but maybe this year's a different example. We say that every year, but maybe this year's different. And then, of course, for the Oilers playing the Canucks, I don't know if the Canucks are necessarily the same team they were last year and will give the Oilers the same troubles. But again, you got to see what happens in the first round. It's always the round where bigger upsets tend to happen. And then, of course, as well, the Flames, man, would that not be a big reward for them to get a minimum of 2 games at the Dome against the Oilers in the playoffs? Again, the mushy middle has its perks sometimes, and that would be a pretty big perk of the mushy middle for the Calgary Flames. So for the Edmonton Oilers, the trade deadline, kind of another season milestone off the board right now, and we tick towards playoffs now, and the Oilers hopefully a better team for the deadline despite not doing anything on deadline day. Friends, thanks for being aboard. I'm up on out of here.